Have you always wanted to be an effective negotiator? Whether you're bartering over a house or a car or even something small. In this video, and I apologize if it's going to be long, but it's going to be 16 secrets that are actual real life negotiating tactics. Some of these are ethical, some of them are non-ethical. For me personally, I always employ the ethical ways to negotiate. I am a Christian first and foremost, and I want you to keep that in mind. So with this information, please do not use it to exploit people, but rather use it to add some good to the world. And also be aware of these unethical tactics so that you can have your guard up when you're about to start your negotiation. Now, the cool thing about these 16 negotiating secrets that I'm going to share with you is that I've actually applied these. Less than 24 hours ago, I was purchasing a used car. I actually ended up purchasing this car, and I am very, very happy with this purchase. The price, the product, but the entire process was somewhat funny because I know negotiating tactics. I've been trained in negotiations. And I could observe in this fellow that he was employing these exact same tactics. And so I thought to myself, I have to create a video for my wonderful friends, family, and fans out there about how these tactics and techniques actually work. Because some of these techniques that this guy used were not ethical, and they drove me absolutely crazy. So I want you to have your guard up, but I also want you to know that I have actually employed these exact techniques in a real situation. If you'd like to look them up, they're called Northwest Motorsport. And when I was first growing up, I hated salesmen. You know, that was like a dirty word. It's like, well, he's just being a salesman. But in fact, just like lawyers and dentists and doctors, there are good salesmen and there are bad salesmen. The point of sales is to identify a problem, and you as a salesman find the solution and you provide that solution. Now, whether or not you make a buck off of that solution should be secondary. However, if you force your solution onto the problem, that's when it becomes unethical. And that's the same in negotiating. If you are just trying to walk away from a negotiation by winning and coming out ahead, and then the other person is exploited in some way, then that's not negotiating. You're just being a jerk. The point of negotiating is where both parties walk away with a win-win situation.
Let's see if we can't just brainstorm and find some creative alternatives that are win-win.
Win.
Yes, thank you, Pam.
So have that in mind as we're going through some of these techniques. The first technique is called physical attachment, and this is absolutely classic. In every single car dealership that you go to, they will try to get you into a vehicle. At Northwest Motorsport, we actually showed up and they said, we don't need your driver's license. We're pretty chill around here. Which on one hand was kind of cool, but I saw what they were doing. They were just trying to get us into the vehicle as quickly as possible so that there is this physical attachment to the vehicle. And let's be honest, we're much less likely to buy something that we haven't actually driven. In all fairness, they're trying to get us physically attached to the vehicle. But just keep in mind that as a negotiator yourself now, if you can get someone physically attached to something, holding it, even just hand it to them, all of a sudden they're much more apt to make an offer and that negotiation will go somewhere. Now, the next thing you need to know is the question, what are you looking for? Now, this is a very, very broad question, and you may think, well, the salesman is just trying to identify what the problem is so that he or she can provide a viable solution. Hey, what are you looking for? But pay very close attention to that answer that they give. So let's use a real world example. Hey, my name's such and such. What are you guys looking for? Well, we're looking for something with great gas mileage and offers a pretty decent amount of protection. Well, hey, you know what? We've got some SUVs over here. They've got some fantastic protection. They'll protect your family, put car seats in there. People can hit you and it'll just feel like a BB bouncing off the Rock of Gibraltar. And we're like, wow, fantastic. That is so cool. And we go and we see all these vehicles that will protect my family. But wait, what about that first thing that I said, which was great gas mileage? He totally just kind of bounced off of that. Be aware of the answer that they give The point of asking, what are you looking for, is to, yes, identify what they're truly looking for, but if in fact they just provide part of the solution, have the guts to say, you missed the first part of that. It has to have good gas mileage, which, by the way, we ended up getting an SUV hybrid, and it serves both of those purposes. Great. Very, very happy with my purchase. The next thing you need to know is add-ons. And this is very unethical. I can't stand when salesmen do this. And in my own line of work of Knox Studio, where I produce film for other nonprofits, I am completely upfront. And even if they have it posted, we're transparent with our pricing. Northwest Motorsports is not transparent with their pricing. This is only $8,000, plus taxes and fees, but we'll get you out the door. Just sign right here. Like, wait, back up. Did you just say plus taxes and fees? And that is the principle of add-ons. They also call this terms. You're changing the terms of the agreement, these hidden features. And I do not recommend doing this because you're going to lose a lot of trust. And let's be honest, you're kind of a jerk when you say, oh yeah, it's $8,000, and then you're like, wait a sec, the final paperwork has this being like 10 to 15% more. And they go, well, that's conventional in all car industries, you moron. Oh, come on, I'm a consumer, I don't sell cars for a living. So where I was at was, I said, what is the final price after taxes and fees? And they're like, oh, well, that's gonna be like more like $9,500, maybe $10,000. And I was like, great, let's start with that number and negotiate based off of that number. And oh boy, they didn't like that. They're like, well, that's Uncle Sam's money. I'm like, no. I'm still paying it. And we're negotiating the price that I am paying, not what you're getting, not what Uncle Sam is getting. Be very aware of add-ons. Some of them can be ethical, some of them can be unethical. For Knox Studio, my own example of my ministry of Knock, I say, look, film production is going to be $1,000, but keep in mind, we have to fly to Cambodia. That's going to be like $2,000 worth of plane tickets. I want you to know that. And so, and people aren't stupid. They want to know that stuff. They're going to be ticked off if you spring that on them at the last moment. So try to identify the final price and work from there. Don't buy into the add-ons. The next technique that you need to know, and this is probably my favorite one, this is the best part about negotiating, and this is get the story. And there's this story of this old man who is supposed to basically go up into this man's attic and find out the value of these old rocking chairs and this old merchandise up in this man's attic. And the old man goes up and he sits down up in the attic, and they're all kind of crowded up there. The old man says, "Why do you want to sell this stuff?" And the guy says, "Just give me a price. Just evaluate how much is in the room, assess it, and give me the price." And the old man just sits there and he's like, "No, you don't understand. Why do you want to sell this stuff?" And the story goes, and it turns out that the man is selling the stuff because his father passed away, and it was his father's belongings. And the point of the story is that the old man, he was negotiating, but he was getting the story first. And this is, like I said, the best part about negotiating. Get the story. Now, as a Christian, I put people first. I am genuinely invested in other people, and I see them as important because God sees them as important. So, not meaning to preach at you for a moment, but that really should be the point of you being here on this earth, is to invest into other people, not invest into a car or negotiate a house or something like that. So to use a real-world example, at Northwest Motorsport, I saw that the salesman guy has these really cool tattoos, and I was genuinely interested in them, and I asked him about them, and he went off, and you know what? These stories of the tattoos, did it really have any kind of bearing on the negotiation? It might have, it probably didn't, except for one thing. It made it so much more enjoyable. And now, if I were to run into him on the street, which he lives somewhat locally, if I were to run into him on the street, I'll be like, "Hey man, how's your tattoo artwork going?" And I'm genuinely interested in that. So get the story. I know it's going to take longer to get the story, and you're probably just going to want to be in and out, but get the story. And this is absolutely paramount in all cultures as well. I've used this technique in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, all over the world. these street vendors who are just kind of glazed over and they're holding their wares and they're trying to sell these things. And I go up and I say, hey, that's a really cool painting. Thank you, yeah, 5 pesos. And I was like, well, who painted it? Like, the guy over there painted it. Great, can I talk to him about it? And you talk to them about it. And I ended up getting these pictures where the artist himself is holding the painting that he painted because I thought to get the story. And let's be honest, I haven't even put that painting up on my wall, but I remember that story because I am connected to that person. I'm walking away not just with a painting, but I'm walking away with a little piece of this man's life. And it makes it so much more enjoyable to negotiate. Get the story. Oh, the next one is somewhat manipulative. It's psychological, but I'm just gonna say it. It's called sign something. To use the real world example of Northwest Motorsports, I put an offer out on the table and he scribbled it down on the back of a piece of paper, could have even scribbled it down on a napkin with a pencil, but he then moved it back to me, slid it across the table, and he said, go ahead and initial next to it. Oh, I just signed something. Now, was I really signing a legally binding agreement? I guess we could have gone to small claims court and he could have been like, look, he initialed this napkin saying that he was going to pay this offer, but then he walked out the door, which by the way is another technique which we're going to get to in a moment that they used on me. Ha ha ha, manipulative. But anyway, the psychological effect of signing something immediately makes you think that this is official. So the sooner you can have someone sign something, and it can be anything, the more likely that they're then going to think that this is a very serious transaction that is about to take place because I just signed something. It's really weird. The next thing that you need to know about negotiating, another technique, is stating a truth. This is bizarre, but it works. People think that if they state a truth, then everything that they're going to say afterward is somehow also truthful. And this is actually a classic fallacy. If you ever study argumentation and fallacies and logical fallacies, this is employed by so many people. But a real world example of what he used was the following. Well, come on, we don't make commission off of this, so I'm on your side. Now, he was trying to state a truth, to break down barriers and allow us to be like, oh boy, he's being upfront with us right now. He's not making any commission off of this. When in reality, all I was thinking was, wait a sec, that has nothing to do with our conversation, with this negotiation right now. But he was stating a truth. And he was thinking that somehow that was going to make him be more on our team because he was stating a truth. In fact, my wife saw right through it. She said, okay, fine. If you're not making commission off of this, can you give it to us for $1? And he just laughed because he realized that we saw right through the facade and he was stating the truth just to be manipulative. The next negotiating tactic is called face-to-face. And this should be employed in every negotiation. Be face-to-face with the person. A lot of people think, well, I'm going to save a lot of time by emailing this offer, or even texting nowadays. That is probably the worst possible way to negotiate. Worst way is via text. Second, slightly better way is via telephone, because at least you can hear some emotion and some, up and down, and it's a bit more personal. But the last and best way is face to face. And this is why companies spend hundreds of dollars to send a salesman all the way across the country for a one-day trip to negotiate something. Why don't they just negotiate it over the phone? I mean, we have Skype nowadays, right? No. If you really want to win something, win a negotiation and to land it, you will be face to face. I cannot express the absolute paramount importance of being face to face when you are negotiating. Because going back to the previous thing, getting a story, it's hard to get a story over text. Like, oh, that's a really interesting tattoo that you have there. Tell me all about it. You can't do that over text. You can't do that over phone. However, when I was there at Northwest Sport, he had great tattoos, and I asked him genuinely, those are so cool. Tell me the story, because I was face to face with him. So it's so essential to be face to face. The next negotiating tactic is not ethical, and I would not recommend it, but Northwest Sport did this. Make him wait. This drives me absolutely crazy, because for me, time is money. And if I'm sitting there waiting, I could be somewhere else actually doing something, not just to make money, because it's not all about money, but I could be out there solving the world's problems instead of sitting here twiddling my thumbs. And this was rather frustrating because my wife actually said, we have a babysitter at home, we need to go. And he was like, oh, that's interesting. What are their ages? 4 and 6. He had no idea what that meant and just kind of ignored that. He was trying to get the story, but he just wasn't invested in that technique. And then he was like, okay, great. I'm going to go to my boss and see what he thinks of this offer. He was gone for a good 20, 25 minutes. I guarantee you he was back there on his phone doing something else. Do you know why? Because we were there on Monday. There was nobody there. There was like, again, 5 salesmen lined up right there doing absolutely nothing. And he actually said, you came in on a perfect day. We're going to get you in and out. He did not get us in and out. He made us wait. And here's the psychology behind making the other person wait. Because they think, well, boy, I just invested an hour into sitting here. I'm definitely going to walk away with something. Isn't that manipulative? It's kind of rotten, and it drove me crazy. And that's probably one major reason why I will not be back to Motorsports rather, because they made me wait. And he knew that I had a babysitter at home that I had to go and bail out. And my wife got really anxious, and I love my wife. And you're doing that to her to make her wait and kind of, in a way, using our kids as leverage? What a jerk thing to do. As a matter of fact, I actually walked back there and I was like, hi, I'm still out here. And he immediately came out and put his phone in his pocket. He was like, oh yeah, sorry, I was I was just checking on the offer that you sent my way. It's like, BS, no you weren't, you're just making me wait. Now this next classic negotiating tactic is called deferral of authority. More often than not, that this is used in a very unethical way. It is this idea of, well, I gotta go check with my boss. Like, oh, you know what? I'm sorry I can't make the decision right now. I gotta go check with my spouse. Have you heard that before? You've probably even used it before, not realizing that that's an actual negotiating tactic. Congratulations. Now, sometimes it's true. You really should be checking with your spouse before you sign up for another credit card. Hey, I'm sorry, I gotta check with my wife, see if we're financially stable for this thing. But in his particular situation at Northwest Motorsport, he said, oh man, you know what? This is a crazy offer that you're putting on the table. Ooh, that's a hissing technique that you can use in negotiating. Ooh, but I don't like to do that because it's just kind of manipulative. But he said, I need to go check with my boss. Do you really need to go check with your boss? And this is the next technique that he employed. Good cop, bad cop. This is absolutely classic. The whole day I was talking with this guy, and then all of a sudden when he went to go check with his boss, all of a sudden out of the back room came this other guy. I mean, I only saw him once throughout the day, but all of a sudden he was an integral part of this negotiation. And this guy, for lack of better words, was very pushy. I'm not going to say he was a jerk, because he really was trying to win this negotiation, but he was absolutely the bad cop. And he came in to do the dirty work. And you may think that the good cop, bad cop thing is just kind of something that you see in shows. No. They absolutely employ this in the real world. And he came out and he was like, oh man, you know what? This offer is way outlandish. This is way over the top. We can't go for this. This is sometimes they can even say this is insulting. One of the favorite lines that a lot of Pawn Stars shows use, come on man, I gotta make a profit on this.
We don't work for charity.
They kind of do this guffaw, kind of this, this is just insulting. And it's a jerk thing to do. And then he went into the back room, and guess who came out? The other guy. And guess what? I was delighted to see him because he was happy and he was like, you know what? I'm sorry about that guy, you know. But okay, now that we've ironed out a lot of the things, I mean, I just had to have him come out here because he's technically my supervisor and he's calling the shots. No, you can call your shots. You've been working here for 4 years. You can make the decisions. You've got your big boy pants on. But they had to pull the good cop, bad cop routine. And it was so bloody painful painfully obvious that they did that to me. Speaking of being emotional, that's another technique that you can use. Emotion. A lot of Europeans, a lot of Russians use emotion. Asians do not use emotion. And if you're in an Asian culture, do not get emotional, or they will be very, very taken aback, and they will never want to do business with you again. In the Asian culture, especially China, they value patience and saving face and allow the other person to save face, which I really appreciate. I love that about the Asian culture. But when it comes to, let's say you go to France and you negotiate, don't be alarmed if someone like stands up, slams their fist on the table and yells, "I am offended!" Because that's just their emotion coming out, and that's how they negotiate. The next negotiating tactic is absolutely classic. You've probably seen this 100 times, but I have to mention it. And this is actually what the bad cop at Northwest Sport employed. He used the walkaway technique. This is when we were almost done negotiating, and I was right on the edge of saying, yes, absolutely, let's do this. Do you know what he did? He said, okay, that's fine. Slammed the folder shut and started to walk away, and he said over his shoulder, I'll have Tyler give you his card. Have a nice day. He was using the walkaway technique. He knew that we were right there, that we had talked about price, we talked about features, we were right there, but he had to force that technique in, one more negotiating technique. And it just wasn't necessary. And me as a person who knows that technique, I just kind of looked at him as he walked away like he was this immature little kid throwing a temper tantrum, like, fine. You know, we had this spirited negotiation. I'm just gonna use the walk away technique. Kind of like he's doing this, like, oh no, you just didn't, and he just walked away. It's like, come on, man, using the walk away technique. Now, a lot of times you can use this in foreign markets when you say, okay, look, this is my price. And if you don't like it, fine, I gotta go catch up with my tour group right here. And you start to walk away. More often than not, if they're gonna turn a profit, they'll run after you and say, okay, fine, we'll do that price. It can be manipulative and unethical using the walk away technique, but if you really are okay with walking away, then walk away. But if you're using it just to manipulate, like this guy was at Northwest Motorsport, then you're being a jerk. Just don't use it to manipulate. But be aware that some people use the walkaway technique. So I'm talking a lot about negotiating tactics that they employed on me, and I'm going to talk about a few negotiating tactics that I employed on them. Not that I'm a professional at this, but I have been around quite a bit all over the world. I've negotiated a lot of things. I negotiate every single day for a living. Not with the point of manipulating. Be very, very careful with that. I'm not in it to manipulate or to exploit people. I'm here to serve. Understand? So what I did was, it's called don't talk first. Another way of saying this is he who speaks first loses. And I walked in there and I said, okay, I see your listing price right here. What's the lowest you can go?
Well, what were you looking to get out of it?
I really think it's worth $850.
So what's so interesting about he who speaks first loses, that means that if I set my price at the list price, then great, we've got nowhere to go but up. And he's probably going to tag on all of these add-ons and just try to squeeze as much out of me as possible. But you know what? He said, okay, well, you know what? I bet we can knock $500 off. I said, knock $1,000 off. Oh, we never do that. 500 is the most we can ever do. Guess what? Long story short, they ended up knocking $1,000 off. They did. But he who speaks first loses. So don't set the standard. Make them set the price. And then from there, you go from there. They're always going to set a price where they can make a profit. They're never going to set a price where they're going to lose something. So, you know, this is ethical. It is okay to make them say something first. Now, in the event of serving actual nonprofits and films for them, I sometimes employ that technique, not in an unethical way, but I really genuinely want to know what their budget is. And if they have stashed away $4,000 for a short film, I'm going to give them $4,000 worth of quality for this film work. It is ethical to ask, what is your budget? That's okay. But if they say, hey, I've only got $200, okay, I know where you're at and I can meet you there. So keep in mind, he who speaks first loses. The next one is called split the difference. I use this as well. This is so classic.
$700 for this thing.
Can we meet somewhere in the middle?
So he set the price, I lowballed, and then we went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and finally I just said, let's just split the difference. How about this amount right here? And he was like, great. But there's something magical about saying split the difference. It's this idea of compromise where both parties are, you know what, we can't come to an agreement, so we're just gonna split this right down the middle so that it'll be equal, it'll be even. When in reality, I'm technically coming out ahead because I lowballed first, and you understand where I'm going with this? So it's this classic negotiating tactic of just saying split the difference. So learn the power of those words. The next thing, second to the last thing that I need to share is I brought cash and I showed up with a wad of $9,000. It was uncomfortable. I withdrawing $9,000 from the ATM. it was kind of scary. I was kind of looking over my shoulder. I actually brought my gun. I always have my gun with me, but still, it was like right there. Like, this is weird. I've got, you know, how many paychecks are in my hand right now. It was fine. People have cash with them all the time. And these car dealerships are used to people coming in with $30,000 in cash and just counting it out. So it's not atypical, but it was atypical for me because I don't have that much money. But use cash. Use cash. Do not get a payment plan. You're just going to lose money. Get out of debt and use cash. Now, the last most important thing that I want to impart on you when it comes to negotiating, and that is bring your wife. It's like, bring your wife? What if I'm not married? No. The point is, my wife did a ton of research before we left. We looked at like 4 different cars beforehand at 4 different dealerships. And so we had data, we had information. And this is what I want to end with, and that is, he who has the most information wins a negotiation. So do your homework and, you know, have the Carfax out in front of you. They'll try to have the most information by having the Carfax in front of them. But before you go to the dealership, print off all these comps. Print off ads that you see on Craigslist. And that's what I did. I was like, look, this private party sale on Kelley Blue Book is, you know, half of what you're offering right there. I know it's a private sale, but surely you can come down to something close to that. I had information. I did my homework. And when you do that, you're more apt to walk away feeling much more satisfied rather than kind of second guessing yourself like, oh boy, I don't know if I did this right. So if you're really unsure and not very confident in your negotiating skills, do your homework. Don't overkill it. I would say that that's one fault that we did, and that was, I'd say we almost had too much information about the drawbacks on this vehicle that we were looking at, this hybrid. It's like, well, what if the battery goes out? You know, it's gonna be $2,500 to fix the battery. That's 25% of the car purchase. And we started asking all these what if questions. And so don't get into the what if cycle, because that's just going to be cyclical and toxic. So if you have too much information that keeps making you ask what if, that's an indicator that you've probably over-researched this thing to death, and just take that information, go out and negotiate. So do your homework. So those are my top 16 tips and tricks, secrets if you will. I guess they're not secrets anymore because I just made the video and told you about these things. Applying them to a real world situation, buying a used car yesterday. And I'm happy to say that I love this car. I'm very happy with the negotiation, how it eventually turned out. I'm not very happy that these people from Northwest Motorsport were employing all of these rather manipulative techniques, the good cop, bad cop, the walk away, the emotions. It was not enjoyable at all. The final product was enjoyable. The actual process, because I know how to negotiate, it was fairly painful to watch them try. So that's it. My name's Bo Chevasu. Take these techniques with you for the rest of your life. Go out, love people, do your homework, get the data, and get the story.